Well, howdy. As you can see, again, I'm in Paradise Revisited, and this is always nostalgic for me. You know, it was right over here, right over underneath that, where those flags are, right in that little bench area where you can sit down. That's where I had contemplated my own uncertainty in 2020. I felt, you know, perhaps I don't have enough wisdom for what we're experiencing here when, you know, everything got really nasty and all the ugliness started to show itself. And it was right there that the guy started biking down, you know, and I should show you right. Okay, see the building over here? See that complex right there? He started biking down, and he was the only guy on the pier. Looked like he was about 28, 29 years old, maybe 30, 31 at the most. Red hair, red beard, younger guy. I get up and I start walking. The opposite direction, and he's like, hey you. And I'm thinking in my mind, you know, I don't know anybody here. I'm just gonna keep walking. I'm just doing my thing. You know, but sure enough, he was dead set on talking to me. And in the middle of my thought here, you see, when I was sitting on that bench, I was contemplating my own uncertainty, my own self-moment of reflection where I felt inadequate for what the times were presenting to me. I didn't know what to do. And he calls me out and he stops. And he's on his bike and he says, hey, he goes, I'm talking to you. And I stop and I go, what's going on? And he points to the water and he says, you see how high the water's getting? And he goes on to share this information with me. And he's talking in a story version as if he's in my head, in the conversation in my head. And he says, you're not supposed to leave here, you're supposed to stay here. He goes, we are responsible for this, the consciousness. He goes, we're not going to let what's coming come into this space. He goes, it won't touch here. And I felt these shivers in my soul. I felt the intuitive sense. I know who this being is. This is Saint Germain. I had been asking for months. I had a picture of Mount Shasta on the wall, and I'd fall asleep every night listening to the I Am Discourses of Saint Germain. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I would feel that, you know, that delta brainwave, that deep sleep, and I would be processing information in the middle of the night. And I'd wake up and I'd have shifts in reality. I had already precipitated at this point. I'd already done an instant, you know, demonstration, a $10,000 just instant in my hand demonstration. I told the story of that several times. But this was so much different. This was, you know, my heart was ready. I really was just at a standstill with my ministry. I thought, you know, God, I've done my best. I've pursued passionately. I've sought out the best in the world. I just did a seminar with Michael Jaco, and I've done the very best I could. What's going on here? And then there it is, right here. I didn't have to make the trip to the mountain to find Saint Germain. Saint Germain came and found me. This was a supernatural experience. The archangels and the ascended masters can take on any shape or form they desire, and they can enter into this dimension at will. At will. Now, that's the second supernatural experience I had in this so-called lifetime incarnation, if you will. And I'll tell you about the first one in just a moment.
I am of the pure mind of God. I am the resurrection and the life in my body, my finances, my relationships, and my world. I qualify everything in my world with perfection. I am perfection. I am this perfect day, and the life that lives in me is the light that cannot fail. I accept only God's perfection, His good, in my outer circumstances. I know in my heart that God is all in all. I am absolutely not concerned about what happens, because I know wonderful things are happening now.
Welcome back. All right. So again, I've told the story here back in 2006. Right before I was going to get married to Sabrina, I had a series of prophetic readings. I was in a Christian organization, and they were very devout and very prosperous, in fact, very prosperous. They ran multi-million-dollar, they still do, multi-million-dollar health clubs and other real estate businesses. And it was very much a learning curve experience for me. But the very first moment was all the way back to 2001. So in 2001, I first became the night manager of this, 30,000 member plus health club because of a series of events. I was driving, heading down in my car. I was young at the time, and I was an exotic dancer. I was living riotously, living through the flesh, totally carnally minded, but yet the Spirit had been calling me. I started, reading hundreds of self-help books by that time. I had already devoured all sorts of marketing content from Dan Kennedy and Ted Nicholas, and I was really getting passionate about, a life of something more than what I was doing. I didn't want to just be, like a weekend, party guy that was getting paid for doing this. It's ridiculous, But there was a pattern of like hiding from the world. I really just did not want to be part of this world. I wanted to just do my own thing and just hide and just run my own show on the side skirts of town, if you will, where everybody else is collectively doing this, and I'm out here on the side skirts of town living in a alternate reality, doing whatever makes me happy, right? Well, the general manager of that health club had been keeping an eye on me, observing me. He sort of had the feeling God put love on his heart for me, and he reached out to me and he says, "Listen, do you mind if I pray for you? I've been watching you for a while now, and I think God really has a plan for you, and I want to talk to you about it. Have you received Christ yet?" And I said, "No." And so I accepted. He's like, "Yeah, we'll go in my office and I'll pray." And I went in there, and he put hands on me, and he prayed, and I was thinking in my mind, wow, this is interesting, like, what's the harm here? And I said, yeah, I accept Christ into my heart, and Jesus come in, and literally it felt like an electric bolt. I just got boom, shot back in my chair, and I was like, how did you do that? How did you do that? And I was tripping, because I was like, what are you, some sort of like magician or something? I didn't, my five senses had no basis for understanding of what this was. This was outside of intellectual reasoning. And he said, well, he goes, you really got jolted by the Christ. And I'm like, was that what that was? And, for a couple years after that, I had pondered that, and I thought, how do I do this? How do I tap into that other realm? I want more of this. I want more of that. I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to do this for people. That's what I want to do. And, that led me on this journey. Fast forward, here I am on the pier. Well, I told you the prophetic reading on my life. The sweet 70-some-year-old lady said I was going to be a modern-day Paul, and I'd solve the unsolvable riddles. And she told me that way before all this unfolded, for a good long decade and a half passed before all this started to realize itself. But that was the equipping season. That was the training ground. I met many fascinating souls along the way, and experienced a lot of teachings, trainings, mentor, protege relationships. hundreds of thousands of dollars I ended up investing into getting information from people one way or the other, or getting access to people so I could, sit under their consultations, if you will. Like I wanted to be their protege, and I paid the fee for it, and I paid handsomely. There were many that I paid $600 an hour plus for access to their time. And it was not wasted, I'll tell you that. Every dollar that I invested into myself, see, there are two investments that I've made, and I'm just going to share this with you, and it's not investment advice, I don't give you that, but I give you spiritual wisdom. Every single dollar that I invested into the kingdom, my tithes, my faith offerings, planting love, alms, and things of this nature, have never, ever been stagnant. They've always entered my future and multiplied, okay? As well as every dollar that I've invested into my own spiritual development and growth in that capacity. Every dollar that I have put into that has come back multiplied in my so-called future experiences. And I can tell you that with absolute conviction. Now, I can't tell you that in terms of the external, things that you can put money into. I mean, that's just governed by the world consciousness. And until you develop the I am presence within as your source of supply, you really don't have a true foundation that will become the wellspring of good for you. You have temporal, fleeting, tide goes out, tide comes in, currents of flow. And that's the world condition. So in the world condition, you'll have seasons of abundance and seasons of drought. And, you may be better than others at this, and you may have varying degrees of receiving it. But the tide will come out and the tide will go in, because that is the way of the human condition. All right? Now, when you have grown in wisdom and you have risen as the fifth element, ether, out of the four elements, earth, wind, water, and fire, and you come to the Christ consciousness within yourself, you found your spiritual oasis. And I'm going to give you teaching today on a spiritual oasis. All right. Now, before I get into that, let me just recap where I was at with Saint Germain. And Saint Germain told me to stay the course and to never, ever give up what I was doing, because the consciousness that we develop protects us as a protective bubble and a shield against all of these outer hallucinations of mortal thought that take on material form and become world stage events. Okay? They become the personalities of the so-called draconian tyrants. It becomes all of these mortal condition absurdities that you just can't fathom. Like, you don't even know what gender they are anymore. They're insane. And they have nothing to do with God's creation. Nothing whatsoever. And the way that you have to demonstrate and realize this, that heaven is at hand. Heaven is at hand, is you have to break the dream. And in order to break the dream, there's only one man who has ever broke the dream: Christ. The living Christ within you. The living Christ within. Say it to yourself. The living Christ within me has already overcome this world. Just say that to yourself. I, the presence I am within me, the living Christ within, has already overcome the world. Now, there is the gospel in just a few simple shortcut phrases. Now, the big secret of applying the gospel to your life has to do with relationships and relating. How you relate to anything is how you relate to everything. Now, when I go back to the story of when I said I wanted to live on the outskirts of town and I wanted to just dance around people and I wanted to live my own jam, God honored that through grace and taught me in that space. That was my 40 days in the wilderness. But yet I had to return amongst the crowd, if you will, and bring that gospel as the living demonstration of I am in the midst of this confusion. And so God brings me back into a new relating experience. And what I learned with the Saint Germain experience was that I had to become very serious about turning to the Christ so the dream could be broken. And that's when I learned the PTT technique. Now, if you're new to my work, what you'll see is that in the unconscious way that things happen, because I'm in the flow, and the flow just develops its own updraft evolution, if you will. All of my books are in sequence. Allow, Mastering the Law of Least Effort to Receive Your Desires. Ask Until It Is Given. Okay? And then we have Trust, the Most Powerful Force in the Universe. Okay? And next will become Love, Living the Good Life. And then I'll have Atone, Being in Togetherness. And if you understand that sequence and how it unlocks this whole ascension process, then you can see exactly where this thing lies in terms of, if you follow this ministry, that's where we are in accord with our ascension. See, first you have to learn how to allow. You have to learn how the perfect universe that God is running is already happening right here and now. But yet your ego resistance to change, your personal history that stands in the way of God's story, his hyphen story, is the obstruction happening from a deluded, insane, carnal-minded awareness of material, fashion, form, objects in three-dimensional space and time. All right, persons, conditions of matter, circumstances that you call good and evil, and qualities that you've ascribed to so-called dead statutes, these are not the ways of God. And the human mind is always reasoning from this position of observing that creative ignorance, if you will. Ignorance observing its own false sense of power. That's what the whole dream is. And Christ breaks the dream. That's the story of Christ. Christ appears in the likeness of flesh, but yet proves that the risen power of God, the anointed self within, the eternal I am, rises out of that consciousness and becomes atoned. And to become atoned, it happens in your subjective thought. It happens in your subjective thought. You withdraw attention from the world of form, and you start to place your affection and your energy, your focus, on the things which belong to God, the things of the Spirit. The things that I am are the fruits of this Spirit: peace, love, joy, kindness, gentleness, meekness, temperance, faith, patience, love, joy. And you begin to atone your state of being, hence self-entrainment technique, which came later down the road. And your state of being aligns the so-called frequency, which the particles of, what you call matter, come into, like motes of dust dancing in a beam of light. They start to form and shape around that electromagnetic field coming out of your state of consciousness. And so as you state change, you parabolically scale up. And what reflects out of that new choice of who you're going to be in the world, the law of correspondence kicks in and brings about what belongs to you in accord with who you're being. And so, fast forward to what's coming next. In the new man consciousness, which I'm going to teach on July 20th, I'm going to go through the red letter words in the Bible and give you all of the consciousness that comes from being atoned with the Christ, speaking from that level of being. See, you can't receive the gospel if you're not being atoned with the Christ. Now, to prepare for this, I've been preparing for this for quite some time. And the glimpses and breakthroughs that I've had of observing these scriptures and demonstrating the proof of them in having the supply show up to meet the demand without any thought whatsoever. That's the proof. Jesus didn't reason how he was going to feed the 5,000. He just tuned into the idea that supply always meets demand in God's consciousness, and that became what is known from his level of being. He is the Son of God. See, if you could have the self-worth that you are the Son of God, and you could convince yourself to believe it, and get your satanic ego mind to fall in line and become the lapdog for wisdom, which was what it was intended to do, because wisdom governs all things. See, even the satanic ego lapdog mind has to fall in line with wisdom, because everything is for God's goodness. Even what you call the so-called destruction cycle that happens out there. It destroys itself according to its own evil ways. An example of what I just said. When I used to watch fear porn all the time, which is why I say don't watch this stuff, because it's not God's thoughts. You're looking at man's thoughts on both sides of the coin. It's a duality. You got one force over here and another force over here, good and evil, that you see in the world. Neither one are there. And so you look at all this stuff and you say, well, I choose this side, and then I reinforce this side by choosing this side. By choosing one side, you reinforce the other, which actually binds you to the same condition that you wanted to escape to begin with. I know it doesn't sound very cheeky to you, because you want to engage in the dopamine adrenaline rush of believing that you're going to change something in this world. But what you don't understand is you have to be transformed out of this world. You have to transform your consciousness into a different realm. It's not for you to come into this one and try to improve upon a bad situation. It's to recognize that where you come from is an eternal situation of goodness, the wellspring of love itself, and to behold of a pure consciousness, the pure mind of God. And so there are three components that you must adhere to if you want to have the self-worth that allows you to achieve any goal that you set your affection upon. The first thing is, when you set your attention on something that you desire, all of the human reasoning of why you can't have it is the resistance that is coming from the ego mind, and all of that resistance has to be removed. And in the absence of that resistance, you already have, because the Christ contains all. So you already have. And so in order for you to choose the self-worth to receive, you have to first become blameless, which means you have to have a pure mind. You have to know the pure thoughts of God by observing only those thoughts, turning away from the thoughts of good and evil of this world. The second thing you have to do is you have to have humility. And this humility is to know that God is all. The Spirit within you is your source. And here's your spiritual oasis. The O, and then the as, and then the is. Oasis. O as is. And O is for the of, okay? Now here, get this. The Spirit of God within me, as my supply, is my supply. Now, here is how you reframe your attitude with humility so that you can step into the first level of self-worthiness. My recognition of the Spirit within me. Just pay attention to that. My recognition of it. Just become aware that the Spirit within you is the Christ principle. Life itself. The ageless, blameless, eternal presence of God's reflection of good, forever manifest in all time and space. My reflection. Okay? My reflection is my recognition of the Spirit, the I am within me, as my supply. Therefore is my supply. O as and is. So let's put it all together. My awareness of the Spirit within me as my supply is my supply. And then you have to transfer all of the burdens of carrying the weight of this world and lean not on your own understanding, which is all the reasoning you're doing out here trying to fix this thing, but lean on every truth that God is. Just this one piece of knowledge, if you would adhere to it, which means stick to it, never let it go. Never, ever, 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 ever let it go. Let me repeat this for you. Close your eyes, take a breath. My awareness of the Spirit, the I am within me, as my supply of all good, is my supply. And if you hold on to this thought every day for as often as you can until revelation comes. Revelation is an insight from God that brings instant transformation in the consciousness. These words alone are not revelation until it reaches your heart and a transformation takes place immediately. If you practice this every day, you will be able to comprehend the biblical truths from the position of being equal to the Christ. Because as your awareness latches on to its own identity of the presence within, recognizing itself as the supply, that becomes the law of spirit that sets you free from the flesh, and it is your supply. Your awareness alone is the supply of all good things. That is grace. That is the opposite of the sweat of the brow ego mentality that this world is teaching you. Grind and hustle and all these other nonsense things. Absolute nonsense. Now, you have to also understand that your supply is governed by your self-image. A bigger vision creates more provision. A bigger vision creates more provision. You can live at the level of poverty and have all of your spiritual needs met by knowing that my awareness of the Christ within me as my supply is my supply. And you could atone yourself to that. And as a person of little means, the ego mind that is coming from that state of consciousness will govern itself according to a small reality. And there's nothing right or wrong about that. It's that your vision equates to that comfort level that you're at. And here's the mystery of why good people remain poor people, like quiet little church mouses in the pews. Because while they may understand that take no thought for my life means Christ goes before them and Christ supplies all their needs, this is correct. And they may have their needs met. They may suddenly get a loan here and there. They may suddenly get a handout from somebody or from the church when they need it. And all of a sudden they squeak by and they find a meal every time they need it. And, for them, they're like, well, I totally understand, my needs are always met, but I sure as heck aren't living very rich. And what I'm going to teach you in the next installment is how you actually attune yourself up to becoming rich. Okay. So, this is the big idea. Now, if you think that you're going to be able to do this just when I explain this to you, you might be right. The chances are, if you have enough of a reason to, if you've developed enough pain to your current situation, you'll probably be a lot closer to it. All right. So if you don't have enough of a painful situation to move out of and move away from what you're presently engaging in as your comfort zone for wealth and prosperity and love and all good things, right? you're probably going to just stay stuck and idle, because what it requires is it requires you to face every suppressed fear. Every suppressed fear that is standing between you and what you desire, which you're not looking at because the ego hides it. It hides it in plain sight so you won't see it. These are the things that rope-a-dope you back into staying exactly where you're at. So you make an effort. You say, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make an extra 50 grand this year, and I'm going to make it happen. I'll manifest it. I'll do whatever. And the ego is very cunning. And so in that moment when you decide you're going to do it, the Spirit instantly gives it to you. It just comes. It comes as the lesson. Okay? And if you don't get the lesson, you become a moron. All right? And so the lesson comes first. And as the lesson appears, what it usually shows up as is your first indication of resistance. And the ego being, hell-bent on staying exactly where it is and keeping you there, it turns away from its conviction moving forward as to what it wants, and it begins to reason for its own limitations. And the minute you agree with that, you reject what you asked for, and it gets sent right back up to Spirit again. And it's over. At that point, you've already sent it back. It's like the mail came, and you said return to sender, and you sent it back off. Okay? That's what you did. Now, then the ego pats you on the back for saying, well, it was too good to be true anyway. Maybe next year. It's probably not the right season. The world's pretty bad right now. You see those reasons? They begin now the ego, once you reject it, the ego begins telling you its reasons. It begins giving you all of the things that you really have to destroy. It's right there in plain sight. Like I said, it's in plain sight. You don't even see it. So your reasons not to do something are actually your reasons to do something. But you don't know what to do with those. And so what God revealed to me is the eye of God technique, and how to make that conscious, how to break it down into its, first principle, core foundational element, and you pluck that out, and it's like the little game Jenga or whatever. You're building up this whole thing. You have all these reasons, and you see that thing rests upon one little pull, and if you pull one little thing out of it, it just collapses. And once you collapse that whole thing, then what happens is your ego snaps into the new reality. And in that second, you take possession of what you want, first in consciousness. So what happens is, as soon as all of the false human reasoning collapses and nothing is standing there because you've removed it and destroyed it at the unconscious level, Spirit, being whole and complete, which is your true nature, begins to assume form to become all sufficiency in your life through divine love's grace. And that's divine love meeting every need once again. But what happened is you just increased your provision by destroying everything that was standing in the way of its appearance. Now you become one with it, which is called engendering, which is what Neville Goddard spoke of. And so when you become one with it, then you crystallize it into form through the emotional midbrain. And when you do that, then you claim acceptance of it by living as this. And you reinforce it with archetypal patterns. You surround yourself with all of the symbols. And you begin to daily reinforce it through new perceptions, which become new beliefs and convictions over a short period of time when done correctly. And so what I can show you, I call it the eye of God. I want to explain to you a few times when I've had to use it. So in 2009, I'm coming out of Lyme disease, bedridden, bankrupt, the worst probable time when I thought I could never be successful. And a really very powerful mentor came along and by proxy walked me into this whole revelation that I can now discern with clarity of how it's done, and got me to believe unconsciously that I was the most important man in the world. Now, how that was done, It was a real art. It was a real art. Really, really, really slick stuff. But anyway, I started believing it. And you know what happened? I began taking possession. And I began demonstrating from that being consciousness, from the level of that awareness, that I was comfortable being that person. And all of a sudden, my outer level, by the correspondent reality that governs harmonious relating, you see, harmonious relating is a fundamental axiom of the universe. So if I'm choosing to be at this level, the harmonious relating is all of the things that correspond with that level. So I increased my provision by deciding that I wasn't this little sick individual anymore. I was now the most important man in the world, and I had godlike power, and all of a sudden I went poof, I went right to that level. So what happened? Instant six-figure income idea came to me. And because I accepted it in consciousness, I immediately took action upon it, and I received it because I expected it. You get in life what you expect and negotiate, and what you have to do is you have to learn how to negotiate with your unconscious mind until it becomes expected. And once it's expected, you will have no problem receiving it. Doesn't matter. Now, after that, I had to scale up even more. So I scaled up a multiple seven-figure business enterprise. And I thought that was great. Now, it's been to the tune of 8 figures plus, okay? Now, that is how I've scaled up. Now, that's not to impress you, because the idea here is that you have to watch out, and this is fair warning, for the love of money is the root of all evil, okay? The love of money is the love of mammon. Now, you can't love money and serve God at the same time. However, money is the scorecard of your own personal self-worth, because of when you choose to be the reflection of God's image and likeness, your growth indicates your level of supply. And when you do it in this way, your giving increases by multitudes. And the secret to first receiving is by giving. Okay, so you have to understand these principles. And so, long story short, I've done this on several different transformational times in my life. And I've remembered this every single time. When things started to fall apart, the creative and destructive cycle came into my life, I recognized that that is your clue, that it's time to make a decision of who you're going to be, and learn how to scale your vision so that it is corresponding with the provision through the law of harmony and correspondence of what you're asking for. And through a series of tools and skill sets, which I've taught many of, ABC break process, safe touch, self-entrainment technique, these are designed to put you into the alignment of receiving what it is that you are creating. It's all about accepting it and saying yes to it and letting it be true for you. Now, with the eye of God, what I've discovered is how to pull the pieces on that whole Jenga board on all of the ego's reasoning beliefs and perceptions that are keeping you stuck in the mud. So in other words, it's like me pulling up with my dually and throwing you a set of chains and pulling you out of the mud and showing you how you can do it for yourself. Now, when you get out of the mud, then you can start, hauling tail toward your dreams faster than you ever imagined, because you're not stuck anymore. It gets you unstuck. Why are you stuck? You're always stuck for ignorance of the Father is the root cause of all suffering. And for what ignorance of the Father could you have other than the false reasoning from the mortal perspectives of this world? You see, if you have any lack or deficiency, according to the vision that you're holding, it means that there is some story that is going on the surface, in plain sight, and it's a level of relating that you're doing. It's a way of being that you are engaging with that is relating to people, places, conditions, and things in this world. See, it's not those things and people, conditions, it's how you think about them. And that whole about them is how you engage in relating to them. All right? So, what to do until now and then? Well, I suppose if you really want to do this, come to the retreat in October. The link is below. So, what did it do for me? Well, when I learned this and I mastered it, What did it do for me? Well, first of all, I sure did invest in it. I invested in the mentorship so that I could work with someone to achieve this. And I was willing to spend whatever. Now, I will tell you that I spent at least 10 times more than you would spend if you came as a VIP to this workshop. Okay, so keeping it in perspective, if you wanted to invest in yourself and you also wanted to sow into the kingdom, a donation to the ministry and investing in yourself to come and learn from firsthand knowledge how to do this, and taking it seriously over the next 30, 60, 90 days, you will spend less than 1/10 of what I did. Less than 1/10. Well, wouldn't you like to pick up something when it's at a 90% discount? Check this out. What if I told you that the most important asset that you could ever invest in your life? Yourself. If you believe in this ministry, if you believe in transformation, if you believe in the power of the Christ, if you believe in this stuff, seriously, what if I told you it's at a 90% discount? And what if I said to you that that was the only thing I've ever invested in that was guaranteed every single time? Is when I sowed seeds into the kingdom, because I know and I have faith. I don't walk in fear, I walk in faith. What if you had the same faith? Okay, so let me get back to what I was saying here. I had to redo the phone. So what if the best investment you could ever make in your entire life, and this is not financial advice, this is spiritual counsel coming you from a minister that has lived this for over 2 decades, okay? You take it for whatever you want, just don't take it as investment advice, because I don't give financial investment advice. I'm talking about investing in yourself. Now, if you put wisdom into yourself, and you reflect wisdom, and you pay the price to obtain the wisdom, there's a price for everything. Some people, I don't need to pay a price for wisdom. What kind of nonsense is that? Well, here's the idea. 99 out of 100 people on this planet or more are worshiping the god of money. Oh yeah, they do. They serve their time slaving away for that god. And they'll do anything for that god. And they worry and they fear about it. They give all of their reverence to it. All of their faith goes into it. And they think that it's a viable means of supply until it's no longer there. When you find out your true supply within and you invest into your relationship there and you pay tribute to that source where that wisdom is reaching you, that is the only investment I've ever made that has brought a return without fail or exception. And I know this for over 2 decades now. Who you become is what you are going to be remembered by. You come into this world through grace and you're going to go out of it through grace. You know how you see young people walking around and you say, oh, they're so cute. Look at how innocent and vulnerable they are. And then fast forward 85 years and you see them walking around again crippled, and look at how cute and vulnerable that old couple is. What do you think you will measure wealth in at the end of your days? You're not taking any of it with you. You're going to measure it in your relationship to the divine. And then you're going to reflect upon the experiences that you've lived, looking through the eyes of whatever wisdom you have obtained. So there's a sneak preview of life's coming attractions for you. Now, the reason why that is the best investment for you is because you're investing in the one thing that matters most. The one thing that matters most is who you become. And who you are reflects as your outer circumstances, the conditions that are all around you, including what shows up in your pocketbook. It is also a relationship. And how you are relating to your pocketbook, the chances are you're relating to life itself in that same way. And there's your big aha, your big heads up, your big clue. And you won't see it yet, but your ego mind is going to try to duck out right now, because I've just hovered over the target and I've just shown you where the big mystery of how you're being kept right here when you want to be here is happening. Now, if I were to be able to come along, just like a mentor did for me 2 decades ago, actually a decade ago was my second experience of it. So each decade, I've had another layer come off. Ironically enough, it's a decade apart. And each decade has catapulted me exponentially. An exponential catapult. What if you could buy your admission ticket into a training program with someone who is capable of helping you grow exponentially, helping you get unstuck at every turn, helping you scale up, not only navigate through tumultuous, uncertain times, but to find certainty and to find all provision within yourself? What if you knew somebody like that? What if somebody was coming to you right now through this screen, offering this very proposition for you? And what if you could get it at a 95% discount? My offerings are a 95% discount because of the fact that I am a minister. Make no mistake about it. If I were to value what I have to offer you in terms of money supply, most everyone watching me would not be able to afford it. I promise you this. You would have to spend over $4,000 an hour to afford my time if I charged what it is actually worth. And here's the catch. Here's the other catch. Even though I speak to you from that level, you'll only hear, because your ego blocks it, you only hear the level that you are having enough faith to receive. And as you pour out, it returns unto you. You see, the several $100,000 that I invested into myself, my personal development, if you will, in my spiritual walk, is the reason why my results look the way they do. It's the reason why I've had several years that have been more fruitful than many people's entire lifetimes. Well, think about it. How much is the average person investing in themselves in terms of wisdom in their entire lifetime? If I look at their expenses they spend on beer, brats, and cheese here in Wisconsin, for example, I'd say, oh my gosh, you spent $5,000 this year on getting drunk and feeding your face. They think nothing about that. They won't think twice about that. They'll take a vacation to Las Vegas and go spend a few $1,000s and gamble and become 10 times stupider for doing it. And they'll think nothing of that either. But who in their right mind, and when I say right mind, I mean it literally, would pass up the opportunity to invest in the one thing that can 10x, 100x, and even 1,000x their results when it's at a 95% plus discount? Who can do that? So people ask me, oh Matthew, why'd you take your videos down for a few days? Well, be alerted that they are going to come down. I am going to take them down. They're going to be reorganized and recompiled. There's no reason to put information out for the average Joe who doesn't have the consciousness to appreciate even what they're listening to. The average Joe wants to go to church and be told that he's going to be okay for the very fact that he sins Monday through Saturday. He wants to believe that he can go sit on Sunday for an hour and, undo all of the terrible behaviors that he has all week long. And he believes that line of crap, and therefore his God never responds when he needs him, because he doesn't even know what God is. So it is a self-delusion. So this journey is much more intensive. What I've got planned for you when you attend in October, I would spend $100,000 myself, and I would take it seriously. And that's what my investment would be. If I had to look at my own living situation and what I have to offer, and if I had to size it up and I had to say, well, what would it take for me to take this training seriously? What would it take? If I throw a couple grand at it, am I really going to take it that seriously, or am I just going on a nice little getaway to, make love a few days and see some incredibly beautiful scenery? I mean, worst case scenario, I'm going to have one of the best trips of my life. I got nothing to lose here. I'd say, yeah, book me, I'm coming. Like, this is going to be incredible. I can't wait to see Door County and go hike in the state park and have fun with a bunch of cool people. I can't wait to do that. But for a few $1,000, my life doesn't really depend on it. It doesn't mean that much to me. I'd have to put $100,000 plus on the line in order for me to actually extract out of it what I believe this to be worth. This is the creme de la creme. This is the pinnacle. This is the everything. What I've got planned for all of these training modules and for all of these intensives that we're going to do is a systematic breakdown of the old you and the reestablishing of a new consciousness in you that accepts what you say you want. And then the combining of the other components necessary for you to stay committed to that, so that you don't do what most everybody does and undo it all within 48 hours. I've been around the block a little bit. So back to the story, yes, my teachings are going to go away. I'm going to take them down. I was here for a season, during the season when the world needed my ministry to be here. I showed up on the scene in 2015. I had prophetic songs that came through me. I wrote about them. I knew what was coming. 2019, 2021, 22, I knew this. I didn't have specifics on how all the things would play out, but I felt it coming. I knew that my ministry had to start. And it wasn't because I'm here to save the world. It was because I'm here to build a legacy for those who care. Maybe my children one day will want my legacy. And I knew that the only way for me to stay rock solid in my faith was to step up my game and to go all in 100%. No holding back. All in. And I put everything out publicly. Did plenty of workshops. And at each one, the teachings got better and more profound. And the results literally exponential. I exceeded my goals by 20 times in 2020. I set a goal in 2019. I did everything minus 2 techniques that you're going to learn additional at this workshop. And I focused on them in 2019. And I put my nose to the grindstone. And I stayed committed. And I 20x'd my goal. I 20x'd it. That was the results that were achieved by getting serious and committing. And I can tell you it was a hell of a lot more than a couple grand. I'll tell you that. Now, what I've learned since then is about 5 times more valuable than what I had back in 2019. And I'm recommitting all over again for a whole new surge. And what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you exactly what to do, step by step, and how to carry forward this plan of action. A proven plan of action, clarity and focus, and skill set trainings that will put you in the driver's seat of a whole new reality and show you how to stay into it, so you don't sabotage and you don't abort and you don't do all these other crazy ego tactics that will 100% of the time happen to the uninitiated who have no concept of what to expect when they set unreasonable goals. So right now, think of a goal. Think of a goal that's worthy. What goal do you think is worthy of your time, focus, energy, and attention? Relationship, career, money, health, success? Which category is it in? Think of what you believe is possible for you and ask yourself to 20x it mentally right now. What does that look like if you were to 20x it mentally? Yeah, what do you think you could make $1 million? What would it be like to 20x it? What do you think? What do you think it's going to take? I know what you think it's going to take, and I'm here to tell you that what it will realistically take is a simple decision, period, full stop. A choice. A single choice. That's all. As soon as you are committed, and as soon as a choice has been made, there's this magic threshold that pushes you over, and you step into a new identity. And in that new identity, it becomes reinforced with new behaviors, and it builds a life of its own, and it sets up a whole new reality for you. That's what has to happen. You cannot achieve it at the old level of consciousness, and that old ego mind from the old consciousness is going to do everything in its power to sabotage you through fear, doubt, distraction, concern over other things that are stupid, like what's going on in the world, like today, the underground bunkers and this and that. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Oh, I'm spreading the truth so everybody will know. You're actually feeding it. You're actually looking at the face of evil, and you are giving affection to the face of evil instead of the truth that God wants you to know, that God is all and God is love. And if that's what you want, then you can't come to this workshop. It will blow you out. You won't make it the first day. I'll tell you that right now. And if you want to do that, then I would say, take your couple grand and divide it up into $50, $100 increments and schedule 50 weeks, 52 weeks of beer drinking and, casino gambling and all the other false start ghettos that you can think of. Because you can't get there from there. It's not going to happen. It's not in the cards. I'm sorry. But if you look at evil and you contemplate evil, you become what you contemplate. You become what you resist. If I say red car, bad, red car bad. Wow, look what just showed up. A freaking red car just pulled up. Red car bad. What do you think is going to show up in your life? Red car. It's going to show up everywhere. I drive in Wisconsin. Look at red car. See? You can't make this stuff up. I drive in Wisconsin. I have a Florida license plate. My ministry is out of Florida. Now, everywhere I go, I see Florida license plates. Why? Because I put my attention on it. Because it's something that I focus on. Focus is the number one skill set of all highly successful achievers. They have learned how to master their focus. They are also excellent at skills that are required that serve the purpose of what they're doing. What I will teach you is how to have both, and how to have a team that keeps you accountable, how to have a recording system that allows you to measure your progress consistently so you can see tangible, scalable results, and how to overcome the ego self-sabotage, which is the big critical component. And if you don't think you can 10x a few $1,000s with that, then I submit to you, I don't know why you're still watching this channel. I have no idea. I don't think anything is sinking in at this time. I think maybe there are other teachers for you out there, and I hope that you find them, because it's a shame if you really are at that level that you can't see the possibility of doing that in a world with 8 trillion extra dollars that got pumped into it, where there is so much money out there. It is startling when you think about it. And the biggest irony is that they got you to believe that there's none out there. They got you to believe that there's none left over, and yet there's more in circulation than ever before. There's more abundance on this planet than you could ever fathom doing and keeping and securing and even enjoying. And the only difference that separates you from it, and this is the abundance of love, the abundance of well-being, the abundance of all good things. The only thing that separates you from it, we address with the eye of God. It is all of the reasoning that your ego mind is perpetually throwing up as distractions, doubts, fears, diversions, and even compulsions. And those are the primary tactics that the ego mind is doing on a daily basis to prevent you from making one simple choice to be a new creation, born again anew in this moment, as the harmonious relating in the law of correspondence with what you say you desire. Like attracts like. Like attracts like. When you understand that simple principle, one simple principle, you come from abundance. Why do you think the ones who are miserly and poor in their hearts have such a hard time tithing? Because they believe they're poor. Even if they have a large income, they are still poor in their spirit. Because only a poor person has a problem giving when there's an unlimited source, because they're looking to the wrong side of where the supply is. They think the supply is coming from out there. And the reason why the churches want you to give out of love, and the reason why you do give out of love to the minister, the reason why you do sow faith seeds, is to prove to yourself that your self-image is the equivalent of what you say you desire. Because behavior is what causes your unconscious mind to come to conclusions. And when it comes to conclusions, it starts to set up new beliefs. And so until you change your behavior, your attitude towards life, in fact, how you relate to life itself, then it is only an ego smokescreen con job to think that you can scale up success. Because the ego's purpose is to keep you right where you are and to allow nothing to change, because it fears whatever change equals its own death and destruction. Because the ego is a construct of like equals like, and it becomes its own slave master. If you make $30,000 a year and you think you're going to make $1 million next year by taking all of these guru courses and all of these, how to build your funnels and your marketing plans and all this crap, until you have chosen to be a new creation and you have gotten your ego mind to become the slave of that creation, and you have destroyed all of the reasons that hold you back from being that creation, then you just invested in something that will equate to a time distraction for you, because it's not going to go anywhere, because your ego will make sure of it. It'll filter out everything you're hearing so you don't remember what you're learning. It'll cause distractions in your world to divert you so you never finish the course. In fact, it'll get you to doubt yourself so you can't even take action on what you're learning. Have you been there before? I am telling you the secret right now. It takes one hell of a courage that most people flat out, they're just not going to have, to become the image and reflection of a new, higher vision that equates to more provision, until they've had enough pain. There's only two ways to do this. Go through one heck of a painful season like I did when I had Lyme disease, and I knew that money was equivalent to my own survival, so I became a monster money magnet, and I went from 0 to 7 figures like in 2 years flat. Boom, done. I had a mentor show me how to do it, by the way. I didn't figure out it on my own. I had someone teaching me every step of the way. Every week, I worked with that person. Every week. I had over 56 sessions that I had all banked up. Sometimes it was 2 weeks, sometimes it was 1 week, sometimes it was every third day, but on average it was about every week. That's how I scaled. And I had plenty of pain to push me out. If you're comfortable by any measure, then I suppose this is probably not going to be okay for you to decide to make this transformation, because why would you? What's the use? You're already comfortable. So maybe you have to wait about 2 more years, or maybe another 6 months, or maybe 3 months, I don't know. But at some point, life itself will try to express more through you, because the will of God is for expression of God's qualities, and abundance is the nature of it, and it wants to increase itself. And if you stand in the way of that, then it creates a perturbance. It creates friction. It creates heat. It creates a situation where you begin to experience loss, calamity. And what that is the destruction of something that is no longer suitable according to what God is willing to do through you. And so God will send you a mentor. God will send you a message. God will show you that who you're being is not in alignment with what God has already planned and given you. And the very fact that your ego won't accept it is why you get frustrated. It's why you say nothing works for me. It's why you start to doubt yourself. It's why you have fear. And all of those things are the very expression of the mind of this world, and you identifying with that mind. You see, I can go on and on and on, and I'm doing this for your own comprehension of what's happening here. So, at every juncture when I've scaled up, let's go back to 2019. I did a 20x of my original goal. 20x. How did I do that? Well, the first thing I did was I got enough leverage on myself with pain, and I really made it real. That if I don't change now, this is not acceptable. I won't tolerate this. Now, at the retreat, I'm going to have you do that in a few hours. I'm going to have you get that leverage, and I'm going to have you feel that pain. This is something that you have to do, like touching a hot stove once. Touch the stove and watch what happens. So if you touch the stove one good time, your brain says, don't ever do that again. And unconsciously, every resource comes alive in you, so that the minute your sense perception sees a hot stove, it starts to alert you. Hey, we got danger here. You need to make your present situation a hot stove. Otherwise, good luck. You're just mental foreplaying this whole thing, and you're going to end up spiritually no-fapping the whole deal. You're going to draw in all the energy, and it's going to come. Spirit's going to align everything for you, and it's going to show up first as the lesson, the less-on, and if you don't get the less-on, then it makes you a moron. Okay? And that's okay. You can be a moron, because most people are morons. The whole world is filled with morons. Haven't you noticed? They're spiritually retarded. And that's the fact. Now look up the definition of retard, and you'll see that spiritual retarded is the condition of most people. Why? Because they reject divine love and the calling to a higher standard. And that very rejection is the retardation of a natural principle of self-evolution into an ascended state, rising out of limitation. And what is it that makes them retarded? It is the data sphere all around them. All of their 5 human sense perceptions that the ego is gathering up as its own history, making its own conclusions, building its own story, and holding it in an umbrella of a little principle. And so what I did is I found out exactly what that little thing was that was holding me down. I realized right then and there that I could change my identity the same way that I did back in 2009 and 10. I did it again back in 2015. I did it again back in 2017. See, every time things started to fall apart in my life, I recognized the very reason why they're falling apart. Because God is destroying a vessel that cannot contain the amount of light God is seeking to express through me. And that vessel is the standard by which everything is becoming judged through the ego mind and its own false illusions. And so I started to destroy all of these false illusions. Now, I did that with the idisrupt.world when I really had a revelation. And in that revelation, it brings insight, which creates spiritual transformation. So in the twinkling of an eye, I remember the exact day. It was right before I did the SAC training, SACC. I had, in the basement of our old ministry, we had this 5,000 square foot, 5-bedroom ministry that we started in here in Sheboygan. And I used the basement, had a conference center, and I was drawing on the whiteboard, and I was just in flow state. And I saw it. I had a revelation. I said, I was never born in flesh. I am the imagination. I am Christ. And in that moment, I transformed. And from that moment forward, my 20X began. Because I began reinforcing it. And you see, that's the next step. Is I began reinforcing it by first looking at all of the reasons that stood between what I say I am and what the world says I am. And I destroyed every one of those little beliefs. And as soon as I did that, the magic just happened. You know why? Because I removed the limiting regulator. Like a car has a regulator on it, can't go above 80. God said, listen, I want to take you 200, but you're going 80. I got to destroy that regulator. So I took the regulator off, and God said, right through me at 200. And I 20X'd, boom, right over the next year. Bam! Every time I've done this, I've done the same thing. Every time, same process. Now I have a very, very firm understanding of how to teach it. I have a very skilled acumen, if you will, of techniques that are repeatable and replicatable, that I can gamify the experience and make it so that you can do the same thing, because everybody is already doing it. I just consciously am aware of how it's done. And so when you look at every great success story out there and people that have made tremendous change, you will find that this is the missing key with every single one of them. I call it the eye of God, right? Now, they maybe call it something else. They most likely don't even know how they do it. They just have a pivotal change in their life, and it's called a revelation. And they don't even know that it's a revelation. Most of them don't even like the Bible, so they would never call it a revelation. But it is, in fact, what you would call a revelation. And in that revelation, they step into a new creation. That minute, right in that second. How you doing? Good. So in that split second, they step right into a whole new identity. And in that new identity, spirit begins forming and shaping itself as every person, condition, and thing that is required to experience the law of correspondence, or equal, like equals like, harmony within that new identity. You get what you identify with in life. That's it. You get what you identify with. That's what consciousness is. It's what I identify with. So a consciousness of poverty is what people do when they go and they look online and they watch the BitChute and they find that the recession, depression's coming, and they start to say, oh my God, the price of everything's going up. And guess what? They identify with poverty. It's a psyop. You're being psyoped into giving up your wealth. Your wealth is from the spirit within. It has nothing to do with anything out there. Nothing. You're being conned. They got you. They're just chuckling at you, making a fool out of God's creation, or are they? Or is it part of God's plan to allow people to experience their own affections? See, if you put your affections on the things of this world, you get the things of this world. And the things of this world are ashes to ashes and dust to dust. You see, I'm dancing around this thing, repeating it again and again and again. Because one day, this revelation is going to hit you. And when it does, you're going to be like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, he was so right. Oh, what? And you might have to take an acid trip to get there. In fact, I know people who've gone on, psilocybin trips or ayahuasca journeys, and they say, everything you said is true. Everything you said is true. Well, you don't think that I've done those same things years ago? You don't think I've been through all that? You don't need to do that to get there. You need to really contemplate the allness of God 24/7, because now you're having a relationship with wisdom. And how you relate to anything is how you relate to everything. And that's what's wrong with your love life. And that's what's wrong with your money life. And that's what's wrong with your health, or whatever else you're experiencing any discord in. It's because how you do anything is how you do everything. And you haven't figured it out yet. You haven't figured it out yet. And you're too afraid to spend $1,000 in a flight or something to come learn it from me. So I'd suggest you might as well look in the mirror and figure out who you are. And figure out why you're stuck. And recognize that they're both one and the same. They're both one and the same. The level that you're stuck at is the level that you identify with. That is your consciousness. Your consciousness is right in plain sight. Go take a look at your bank account. Go take a look at how much money you have in your net worth. That is your present consciousness. There's no getting around it. There's no telling lies to anybody else. That is where you're at. Now, it's neither good nor bad, because all it is it's a decision that you have previously made, usually by default, because somebody else made it for you. Somebody else on the, conspiracy network or, TV or whatever made that decision for you. They told you that there's a shortage and a famine, and you said, well, God darn it, that's true. And then all of a sudden, oh, you don't have any money left over. Well, guess what? You decided to believe a lie, and you're living inside of that lie now. And guess what? It worked perfectly, didn't it? It worked perfectly, didn't it? It worked absolutely perfectly, didn't it? And yet people say, oh, it's just mundane. I just need to know what's going on out there. I just need to know. I mean, I only spend 4 hours a day looking at how bad it is every single day, all day long. It's not like I do it a lot. I mean, I put in 15 minutes of spiritual time every day. Well, okay. So what you're saying is, well, God, I want to have a relationship with you, but for 4 hours a day, I'm going to commit adultery and I'm going to go sleep with this world. And God's saying, wow. Yeah, I think I'll let you taste the bitterness of this world, because you've given your affection to the great whore of Babylon. And you say, but no, I was doing the right thing. I was standing up for God. I was telling everybody the truth. No, you weren't. You were actually poisoning yourself with a diluted truth that was actually, well, let's call it what it is. It's a pig with lipstick on. It's a false idol.